What does it mean for NanoRacks to have this cooperation? I believe this is the first time that you do this, right?
Yes, this is correct. And it's important for me to underline that this is a purely commercial project to NanoRacks. What we're doing is a commercial service, and it's done in fully compliance with what known as, you could say, the Wolf provision that restricts how you can interact with China on the station and space. So every details in this project has been looked through by NASA and then presented by a note from NASA to the Congress, explaining that NanoRacks is capable of doing this service without any violation of, you can say, both the letter and the spirit of the Wolf provision.
Now you mentioned the Wolf Amendment which was enacted in 2011, which stipulates that neither NASA nor the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy may, quote, develop, design, plan, promulgate, implement or execute a bilateral policy, program, order or contract of any kind to participate, collaborate or coordinate bilaterally in any way with China or any Chinese-owned company, including the hosting of official Chinese visitors at facilities which belong or which are used by NASA. Indeed, that's cutting off practically every single possible means of any possible bilateral governmental cooperation between China and the United States. Has this amendment been meant any kind of obstacle to you, and do you think that in the future, since this first cooperation, there will be gradually more room for cooperation between the two sides, even just in the commercial part?
Yes, so absolutely. This is a way of commercializing space, what we're doing here. And you can say the way we work here is that we undertake services like this, where we are, you can say, again, on the edge of what is possible, both technical and political, which doesn't fit into the big program streams of the agencies. But we do that on a commercial basis. And to work with the Wolf provision, we take the full service on this, which means that there's no exchange of technology, there's no exchange of information, data, interfaces, except for the pure scientific data that's gained by this project. So you can see again, this is what we call a pathfinder. It's a stepping stone towards more cooperation going forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Bak, head of the European...
Again, I like to...
Yes, go ahead, please.
I like to let you... So, sorry, I would like to emphasize that this also is what we see in very nice lines with what President Trump has put out for forward cooperation with China, business-wise and in space.
So there is a potential window of opportunity there. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but that was Peter Bak, head of the European operations of NanoRacks. And for further discussion on the subject, I'm pleased to be joined by Professor John Horack from the Ohio State University in Columbus and Professor Yang Yuguang from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Professor Horack, let me come to you first. Now, the U.S. Congress passed the Wolf Amendment 6 years ago. At the same time, China has advanced its space development, sending its own development latest into space. Now, what kind of impact has the Wolf Amendment had on China-US cooperation in space technology?
So in some ways, the Wolf Amendment has had no impact in terms of the collaboration at the very basic scientific level. Our scientists between the United States and China collaborate extremely well. Very fluid information exchange about the way the universe works, about fundamental areas of biotechnology or other areas of research. Where the Wolf Amendment has constricted our ability to work together is in government-to-government activities. And as your colleague from NanoRacks just said, This is almost as if you're buying a Coca-Cola, where when I go buy Coca-Cola, I don't get to see the secret formula, I don't get to go into the bottling plant, I just give someone money and the Coca-Cola comes across the counter and I enjoy the results of that transaction. And this is the very same thing. Beijing Institute of Technology, Professor Feng provides resources to NanoRacks, who then works the entire process of getting their hardware to the space station and returns to them their results once the experiment has run its course on board the spacecraft.
Professor Yang, now how do you look at the significance of this commercial cooperation? Of course, there is no technology transfer, but still, what could be a possible indication of the kind of scope of cooperation for the future?
Well, commercial spaceflight is really a hot topic in recent years. You know that China and the US cannot cooperate very closely now because of the prohibition of the United States Congress. But each government, including the administrator of NASA, the former administrator, Mr. Charles Bolden, has expressed his wish to cooperate with China. So the commercial manner, it will be, I think, a good way for both sides to cooperate. In the years before, actually speaking, I also contacted with NanoRacks. In 2014, I met them in Toronto during the IAC, and they introduced their racks on the ISS. And this, at that moment, they said, yes, we can have your experimental instruments on board. So at that moment, I also studied the possibility for the future cooperation between us.
Why didn't it go through? In the end, it didn't work?
Well, you know, that's it's very complex because I also raised some proposals for this kind of cooperation. But you know that the progress and the investments and also the size of the experiment will also influence the final result. So I think this time I also know the team in Beijing Institute of Technology. Professor Zhang Fengyuan also plays a very important role in this experiment. So the scale of their experiment is small, and it is more possible for this kind of small experiment to be on board ISS.
Why was it necessary for a Chinese experiment to use an American company for the launch, and how big could potentially be the Chinese demand for this kind of service? Professor Yang still.
In fact, there is a great demand in the scientific research field to have experiments on board a space station. You know that the space life science, space biology, and even the material manufacturing is very unique in this environment. So these kind of demands are very common either in China and the US. In the future, to use these kind of resources more efficiently, it is reasonable for each country to open its space laboratory, like China has did. The China Manned Space Agency has announced that the future China space station will open to the whole world for scientists. So, and also we've already have many experiments with Europe on board our, we've already launched the Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2 space laboratory. So this kind of cooperation is necessary for both sides, for every side, and also utilize the resources more efficiently.
Professor Horack, while the US has frozen cooperation with China in the official bilateral way, China has been actively working with its European partners and making strong headways in space exploration. How could legislation impact US's space exploration efforts? Has it backfired? After all, there is great potential if the big countries can really work together.
Yes, I agree. There's great potential if we can work together. Laws in the United States have sort of this mixture between promote and protect. Sometimes we promote the law promotes something that we believe is in the interest of betterment, and sometimes it's to protect against the unknown. And right now, for better or worse, and I think probably for slightly counterproductive, the balance is to protect. And I believe that the opportunity, as Dr. Yang said, for us to engage in this way is a way for us to over time build trust, build understanding, to communicate more clearly so that our governments can follow where the private sector is leading the way, and where our scientists and citizens are also leading the way to provide better collaboration in space. Space is not a luxury anymore. It's a fundamental component of civilization. And I think we're all interested in preserving and promoting civilization for all people everywhere.
Yeah, Professor Horack, is there a possibility for the Congress to relax this kind of restriction in the near future, maybe under President Donald Trump, who seems to have some very interesting idea about joint space or innovative ways to use this to explore the space?
So one lesson that I have learned in my 50-something years on the planet is that tomorrow is very different than today. My grandparents and my parents lived in a time when, for example, Japan was an enemy of the United States. Germany, we were at war with Nazi Germany. We fought a war in Vietnam. We were fighting the Cold War with the Soviets, and yet at the same time, today we collaborate with them very well. In 1975, we flew a mission with the Soviets, Apollo-Soyuz, that was a pathfinder for collaboration and cooperation. I strongly believe and I fervently hope that we have similar opportunities between the United States and China. It's in both of our interests to collaborate, to communicate, and be transparent, and figure out how to make positive outcomes from collaborative spaceflight.
Mm-hmm. Professor Yang, what are some of the opportunities in place, even as there is this legal obstacle by the US Congress for US and US space scientists to work together? We understand that under multilateral mechanisms there are still this possibility, and a lot has been going on. What are the prospects in that regard?
In fact, it's really difficult for us to cooperate directly, like a bilateral manner. But in fact, Dr. John Horack and I have already prepared for the potential future cooperation. John Horack has already raised the idea of a bilateral meeting every year between the China Aerospace and the United States. This mechanism has already been established between China and Germany, and also China and Netherlands. So in the future, we can discuss the possibility, and whenever when the policy has been changed, we can cooperate at once and have the maximum returns at the first moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have to leave it there because of time strain. Thank you very much, Professor John Horack from the Ohio State University and Professor Yang Yuguang from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation.